Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We have our second session actually of the year, and Simon Landry will be walking us through his presentation, Design Smarter, Not Harder, Tips for Good User Experience. So just a little bit about Simon. He's a seasoned researcher with over a decade of experience in startups, academia, and healthcare, and specializing in translating advanced research into practical applications. Simon is currently a UX researcher at a legal tech company applying AI to solve complex problems. So you're in for a really good session today. If you have any questions, just feel free to pop them into the Q&A section so that they don't get lost in any chat. But I'll also just try and monitor the regular chat bar here to flag those questions. We'll probably take most of them towards the end. So yeah, we'll try to get to everybody. But yeah, at the end, if you would like to speak rather than typing, just use the raise hand feature and I'll give you access to your mic so you can ask your questions. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to you, Simon, and we can get started. Thank you so much for collaborating with us on this.
All right. Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for making time this morning to spend the hour with us. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully you'll learn something. So I'm Simon. I'm a user experience researcher, and basically what that means is that my job is to understand how users, customers use my company's products, so that when we build new products or services or are looking to modify them or improve them, I advocate for our customers so that it's not like an internal discussion of, oh, I think I know how our customers use our products. I'm there to say, no, customers use it this way and that way, and these are things that are important for them, and this is what we need to modify. So here's what we're going to do today, what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to do a little introduction to usability. So what is it? Why should you care about it? What exactly is this user experience? Then we're going to go over these basic principles. So there are these 10 steps that you can follow. It sounds a little like sales pitch, but it's like follow these 10 steps and you'll have a good user experience. But it's true. And then we're going to do I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a live user experience, live usability evaluation of a website. And then towards the end, we're going to take a look at other sets of principles. So maybe after we go through the 10 steps, you'll go, yeah, my product's already pretty great. I'd like something a little bit more specialized for my type of product. Well, I'm going to show you that there are those different types of sets of principles that you might want to look at if you want to improve your product to kind of the next level of user experience. And then finally, if after all this, you're totally bought in, you're like, I'm going to do this thing. But then you're like, what should I do after that, Simon? I'm sure it doesn't end with just these 10 steps, making sure my product follows these 10 steps. I'll and then we'll have a bit of time at the end for questions. And if any of you have a product that you are working on, I'm really happy to do like a live demo here. If you feel like you're up to task, you're like, this is really good, or if you think this is really bad and I need a bit of help, feel free to throw it in the chat. And if we have time, maybe we can look at what this evaluation would actually look like for a real product that is in development. So, what is usability? Well, an easy way to think about it is kind of the result of your customer saying, I can do this, all the times that they go, yeah, I can do this. This is great. I'm having a great time. Minus all the times that they go, oh, why won't this work? And so a product that has more, I can do this, and less, why won't this work, will be a usable product. But that's all great. But why should you care? This presentation is tailored for business owners, maybe you have a digital product, maybe you're responsible for one. Why should you care about usability? I'm sure you've got a bunch of other stuff that you're weighing, maybe sales, maybe your limited technology or resources. Why do you need to bring in this other thing, this usability aspect, this design aspect into the equation of how you need to prioritize your resources? Well, the first reason is you want to keep your customers. So you probably work really hard to get your customers. Well, with good usability, you increase your likelihood of them coming back to your product. So 88% of online customers are less likely to return to a site after a bad user experience. So if you've worked so hard to get 100 customers, you don't want 88 to just never come back because you had a bad user experience. And another reason why to think about usability or the user experience, I'm going to be using those words kind of interchangeably, is that it's actually a pretty wise investment. So every dollar that you invest in usability, so in the design of a really great experience, can lead to returns of up to 10 or even $100. And you might be looking at this and being like, I don't know, Simon, that is pretty ridiculous, and I do not believe you. Well, the way to think about this is when we talk about investment in usability, we talk about investment in design, in the UX. And so in effect, what this is if you have a UX designer, let's say, or a UX researcher, the amount of money that you spend on hiring them, they might tell you, hey, you know what, your checkout flow is not optimized. There's something about the checkout flow that people just can't get through to donating money or to paying or buying your product. And so if you have a lot of customers, well, just making a few tweaks can lead to massive increases in revenue. So that's what this kind of almost extreme number means. It means that slight tweaks, when you have a lot of customers, a lot of volume coming through, do scale to large returns. All right, so let's talk about basic usability principles. And I'm going to be calling them usability principles. In kind of like shop talk, these would be heuristics. So a heuristic is a principle. If ever you kind of look up this kind of stuff later on and you see the word heuristic, don't think that it's something completely different. It's the same thing. I just think it's more accessible to call it a principle. And so the idea here is that usability, like our ability to basically have fun, to enjoy using a digital product, is guided by a pretty consistent set of principles. Good design is not accidental. It's really based on the way that humans think and interact with things. And I hope that as we go through these 10 principles, you're going to go, oh yeah, like that makes sense. That kind of puts words to something that I already feel. And it's really like, if I was, well, let's try it right now. So I want everybody who is listening, I know you might have it in the background, so that's totally fine. But if you're kind of engaged with this webinar right now, try to think, what is something, like what's a principle of a good user experience, of a good product? Like what is a thing that I could put into maybe a sentence or kind of like a little headline, and then I can just take a look at other products to see, do they do this thing? And you'll see it's probably a little trickier than you think to put words to what you feel is good design. So let's take a look. Seamless checkout, fast, intuitive, easy to find information. And yes, it will be okay to share these slides after the session, totally. Not busy, call to action. Yeah, logical flow, totally. Less text, more visuals. Yeah. So we're getting there. We're kind of trying to ease of use. Yeah, these are my eyes know where to go. totally accessible. Absolutely. And so we're kind of going to take all these concepts that you're putting out in the chat and really defining them, accomplishing a task, defining them in really nice ways that are repeatable and scalable. Intuitive visuals. So the principles that we're going to go through right now, these 10 principles, are kind of going to be your checklist. So it's practical and easy to use, and this will help you spot kind of the low-hanging fruit to improve the user experience. And as you become more familiar with these principles, you can kind of see the more see past the like low-hanging fruits to really increase the user, to improve the user experience, and kind of like in very subtle but meaningful ways. Let's see if there's any. Yeah, perfect. All right. So these are formally called the 10 usability heuristics, but here we're going to call them principles. So the 10 usability principles for user interface design. So this is very specific for digital experiences. They could be for like an app. They could be for a website. They could also be for like a digital kiosk at an airport or at a store. So this is just kind of a digital interface. So the first one is a match between the system and the real world. So what you want to do here is your experience needs to talk to users in their language. You want to use familiar words, symbols, and concepts so that like your product, if it's, I don't know, a library website, use kind of library words. Don't use technical jargon. So for example, if you have an error 404 error message, that's pretty meaningless to somebody who just wants to check out a book. But if it says page not found or maybe book not found, well, that speaks to them in a language that they'll go, okay, I don't feel excluded from whatever's going on here, and I feel good to be on this website. So with every usability principle, we're going to have a little example. And here we have something from Microsoft Access, which makes 0 sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to, maybe there's some Access pros on the call who are like, this makes total sense. But type mismatch in expression. I don't know what that means. I wouldn't want this error. I just click OK, and hopefully the rest of my database doesn't crash. So the second one is consistency in standards. You don't want to make your users guess. So you'll want to stick to familiar patterns and standards. So like, for example, the blue underlined text for links, little hamburger menus, the little 3 lines are for navigation. And this just allows people to look at something and just understand what's going on and not kind of be like lost as to what am I supposed to do here? Can I click on that thing? I've never seen that weird icon. What is it going to do? I'm just not going to click on it. So the example that we've got here is 2 settings menus. The first one here, all the buttons are kind of these boxes. So visually you see, okay, cool, this is a box, that's a box, and that's a box. In the other example, the 2 buttons do not have a box, but this clear data does. And so to a user, they might not immediately get that this is clickable, the force stop and uninstall, while this, they'll probably understand that that's a button. So this is a nice little example of what does it mean to be consistent. I'll pause here and see. All right. This one here, visibility of system status. So you've probably been in this situation where you're on a website or using a product and you click on something and the product should be doing whatever task. And there's like no way really to know if it's frozen or if something's happening. And it's just a really bad time, and you've probably like reloaded it. I do this all the time. It freezes. There's no visibility of system status. and then I click reload. And then when I click reload, the page loads like what I was waiting for. And I'm like, ah, no, I waited for so long. And now I got to start back from scratch. That's just a really bad experience. And so just make sure to let your users know what's going on so that they're not guessing whether it's frozen or it's loading. So a nice little loading bar does the job. Um, Little confirmation message. Basically, you don't want to leave your users guessing whether it's broken or whether it's working. All right, here, user control and freedom. This is just to accept the reality that your users are humans and mistakes will happen. That's totally fine. Just if you can, give them the opportunity to go back or have an undo option. Um, they might accidentally delete something, send something, go to the wrong screen. You just need to let them navigate with ease without making them feel trapped or just scared that they made something that's like permanent and just forever a mistake. This here, the example that I chose here is the undo button for when you send emails in Gmail. I used this last week. I sent something, and then after I was like, ah, shoot, no, I forgot something. And then I clicked undo, and it didn't send. And I thought that was just a wonderful little experience that it probably would have been okay had it not been there, but that it was there just made it memorable and just worked with me as a human using this product. And ultimately, that's what we want to do when we design products. Just allow the human in front of the screen to just have a good time and to do their work. Error prevention is another one. So this is about errors. The best error message is no error message at all. So you want to design your experience in a way that you don't end up with an error message. There's like little signs and hints to show you that, you know what, you're about to have an error, but I'm going to help you prevent, like make sure that that doesn't happen. So a good example is if you're about to delete a file, it goes, hey, are you sure you want to delete this? It's better to click, yep, I'm good. I want to delete it, than accidentally deleting something, then going, shoot, where did it go? And then after 30 days, let's say if it's set up in that way, it's just gone forever. And you're like, what? I don't remember deleting this thing. I just can't find it anymore. So the examples that we've got here is from an older Twitter UI where so you had what was it, 140 characters, 140 characters. And so after 140 characters, the text just became red and you had a nice little minus counter. And so looking at this, you can tell, okay, cool, these letters, these characters are too much. I've got 42 characters that I need to get rid of. Um, and you could not click on tweet. So it doesn't allow you to click tweet and go, oh, wrong, like you got too many characters. It's the limit, the error prevention is integrated in their designs in a really clever way. And then here, this is for passwords. So you might have a product where you need a certain secure password. And so in this example, you type 2 characters and it says it's too short. So you already have the information about why this would not work even before you press enter. Um, I'm sure you've all seen the examples of password experiences where you like type something and then you press enter. It's like, ah, shoot, no, it's too short. And then you're like, okay, I'll add a few letters. And it's like, you forgot, I don't know, like a number. And then you do this really frustrating back and forth. And ultimately you do get your password, but it was just a bad time. And so there are ways to design to prevent those type of errors. The next one is help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. So sometimes things will go wrong. That's fine. But make sure that you don't just go, hey, there's an error that happened. You're on your own, man. Good luck. Give them explanation and context as to what happened and how to fix it in plain language. So here, and then bonus points if you can make it easy for them to recover, like retry buttons or some sort of clear steps. And here the example that we have is a browser, and so you'd put maybe the wrong URL, the wrong address, and then you've got some steps like, yeah, try again later. Maybe right now it's offline. Maybe it's your network connection. Maybe there's a firewall or something. And then you've got your try again, because you know what? Maybe you just forgot to connect to the to the library internet, and so you go, oh shoot, I'm not connected. I'm going to connect and then try again. Let's see if there's any. All right, so something this happened. Okay, so there is a question. Something this happens. Server and client ways of doing things can be deceptive in some special situations. Yeah, so you need to assume part of research also is to assume that people are going to use your product in ways that you can't even imagine, and in ways that you're probably like, who would click on that in that wacky way? And so a lot of this, you may have noticed, a lot of this is sort of handling errors, and that's because people are going to use your product in ways you could not anticipate, and they're going to break it in just these really weird, unexpected ways. And so how do you make sure that when they do that, they're they don't think this is a garbage product that makes no sense to me as a paying customer? I'm going to stop giving you money. I'm going to go to the other person who at least helps me out, who doesn't kind of look down on my on my way of using the product. Here we've got another principle: recognition rather than recall. So this is a really fun one, I think. So it's the idea of don't make users remember stuff, show it to them instead. So this can be an autofill suggestion, or Google has a really great example of this. It's and you probably have noticed it but never put words to it. But it's this idea of giving you a different color to links that you've already clicked on. So I might not remember that I've been on the Digital Nova Scotia website, but when I search for it, I see, oh yeah, it's purple. It's a different color. It allows me to recognize that I've clicked on that link before. It's a really small thing, but it's important, and it just really improves the user experience. So that this idea of like, I'm sure we've all had this experience where you go, oh, what's that thing called? And so you're trying to recall the name of that thing. But if there's like a menu with several names, then you go, oh yeah, it's that thing. I recognize it. So it's easier for us to recognize things than to recall. And so it's just about making things easier. And this is a very easy way to do that. All right. So we're getting towards the end. So this is flexibility and efficiency of use. So you want to cater your product to new and experienced users, and things like shortcuts for power users or hotkeys, and maybe some like onboarding or guiding steps for beginners means that everybody gets what they want from the product and they can learn at their own pace. So this is really designing an experience that works for new users as well as expert users. And these hotkeys well, they're like super common for Windows, are a great example of this. So sure, you could, if you want to copy, you can select the text, right click, copy, or if you know the hotkey, you can just Control C. It makes, I've used these hotkeys all the time. It makes my life just a little bit easier, and it prevents me from clicking like 3 times, which would ultimately probably get really annoying. All right, so this one is aesthetic and minimalist design. And generally speaking, less is more. You don't want this really busy, cluttered interface. However, I do want to point out that this is only applicable as kind of like a blanket statement for North American and European users. There are, the world is very diverse, and there's a lot of perspectives, and there are places where apps that just have a lot of stuff going on is a great experience, and that's fine. So if you are designing something for a North American or European um, user, then you probably want something that's pretty minimalist, um, that doesn't have too much clutter, too many distractions. Everything is very precise, and you want to add links and content that empowers the user to accomplish their goal. The counterpoint to this, of course, is Amazon, which is a super successful website that looks so cluttered and is so difficult to navigate sometimes. But you know what? They're still one of the wealthiest companies on earth. So maybe this one is a little bit less important. But if you're starting out, if you're not quite at Amazon's level, and your audience is North American, European users, you should probably stick to this one. All right, now we've got help and documentation. So we're seeing this theme emerge again. Help, this idea of making sure that people can use your product. So even the best designs might need a little bit of help. You want to make sure that there's a way for people to get clear, searchable, and easy to follow documentation, whether it's like tooltips or this help interface. And you want that help to be there when they need it. So the idea here is you've got a well-designed experience. You are trying to mitigate all of these errors and trying to design for errors. But at the end of the day, stuff will go wrong. And when it does go wrong, just make sure there's a place so that your user can go to just get a bit of help so they don't feel lost and abandoned by you. So it's a safety net, not a crutch. All right, I'm going to take a look at the chat, see if there are any questions. All right. So let's keep on going. So now let's talk. We've gone over these 10 usability principles. Now let's talk about how to actually run a usability evaluation. Hopefully you're totally bought in and you want to do this thing with your product. So here's how to do it. So the first step is to get 3 to 5 people to use your product for these predefined use cases. So figure out what do you expect people to do on your product, and kind of make a little list and figure out what the important ones are. Your product should be pretty specific for some use cases. Those are the ones that you want to really optimize. And the reason why you want to get 3 to 5 people, not like 10 to 20, is because you actually get diminishing returns once you hit the 5-ish person sort of number. So if I do a usability evaluation, I'll find, let's say, 50% of all of the issues. If you get 2 people to do a usability evaluation, you'll maybe get like 60, 65%. And then as you add people, you're going to get maybe like towards 65 and then like maybe 70, 75% of all usability issues. And so whether you get 5 people or let's say 10 people to run this usability evaluation, you might only find like 1 or 2% more issues. So it's not really worth the investment to run these evaluations with more than 5 people. So as these people go through the use cases on your website, obviously, or your product, you would want to make sure they're familiar with the 10 usability principles so that they kind of know what to look for. And you'll ask them to write down what they find. So I'm gonna do a live demo after this, and I'm gonna use a Google Sheet that I prepared. I can share the link. There's also another link to a Google Sheet that I think is a little bit better than the one I'm going to be using, that I'll have the link to in the slides. So when you have access to the slides, just feel free to take a look. And so people need to write down what they find. And then finally, you'll want to prioritize the issues because you probably are going to end up with a lot of little things, a little list of issues that you might go, oh, this just seems like work. Now I just made work for myself. Well, what you want to do is figure out which of these issues happen on the happy path. So on kind of the expected experience, when somebody is doing whatever use case that you choose, which are the issues that always pop up along that important use case for you? And then you want to say, okay, these are the ones. And then you might have, I don't know, 10 issues. And then you go, okay, which of these are hard to overcome? Some of them, it might just be a pop-up that you just go, yeah, next, whatever. And then the ones that are hard to overcome, you then want to find the ones that are persistent, the ones that like always show up. Sometimes, obviously, you'll have kind of these random errors and just weird quirks to your product. If you have issues that are on the happy path, hard to overcome, and persistent, those are critical issues that you need to deal with as soon as possible. If they're happy path, hard to overcome, then they're serious. Like depending on how many of those three factors you have, you'll prioritize accordingly. So now let's give it a shot. So I'm going to open up the website for the Museum of Natural History here in Halifax. And the use case is I want to plan a visit to the museum. So let's take a look. So I've got my heuristic here that will hopefully load. While this is loading, I will take a, okay, here we go. So I've got this sheet that this is kind of stuff that I would use where you have your list of 10 heuristics here, just kind of to help you recognize rather than recall. And then I'm going to write down my observations, select the heuristic that I want here, and then I'm familiar with these, the severity level, so I'll write whether it's catastrophic, so that means that it's on the happy path, hard to get around, and it's persistent. And then major is just two of those things, and then yeah, it kind of goes down in terms of severity. And then the idea is you want like a title. This is like your header, and then you want to write detailed description, maybe some notes here. You can put the URL, and then you can put a screenshot just to make it easy for you as you review this document from your 3 to 5 evaluators. You want it to be really easy to be like, oh, what was this person talking about? So that's the purpose of this document. And so let's give it a shot. We're going on the Museum of Natural History's website, and I want to plan a visit. Okay, cool. So there's some events going on. That's great. Visit us, teachers, about the museum. Okay, what to see and do. And so I might go, okay, what are the events? And so, oh, there are no events right now, but you might remember that there were events. There's the Lego thing and the other thing going on. So this is a bit of a problem because you're forcing your users to remember that they did see events on the homepage. So I'd go, okay, cool. So no events on page, and then I would select a heuristic that might be recognition rather than recall. Severity, I don't think it would happen all the time. There's no real way to get around it, and it's consistent. So I think it's pretty high. And then I would type details. So when I go to, it's nothing. And then you would take this link throw it here. I'm not going to take a screenshot. And then you just kind of keep on going. So yeah, okay. Yeah, and then can I go back? I can go back, so there is navigation. All these words do match what I would expect. And then I might go, there's one here that I remember. So visit us. I might look at here and go, okay, visit us. That's what I want to do. I want to plan a visit and then get connected. This all makes sense except get connected. I don't know what that means. And so I might go, okay, get connected and then put it in. I might also notice that this text here, the font is very, very small. So you might want to put that under aesthetic and minimalist design. It's a little hard to read. It's super tiny. So the idea here is that you're going to have 3 to 5 people who are filling out these very subjective sheets based on kind of shared principles. And then once you have these sheets from all of your evaluators, you're going to combine them. And then if you have the luxury of having the evaluators sort of on staff, or if they're employees or whatever, you can have this conversation where maybe if I was one of the 3 to 5 evaluators, maybe I'm the only one who's like, no events on page is catastrophic. Maybe nobody else kind of picked up on that. And so you have this discussion with the other people to say, oh, I noticed this thing. Why didn't you notice it? And maybe they're like, well, maybe I didn't see it, which is a good reason, or maybe it's not important for whatever reason. So you have this conversation that will lead to a nice little list of observations with the appropriate severity. And you might have discussions around severity too. Maybe I say this is a number 4, such a bad issue, and then maybe somebody else is like, yeah, I noticed there are no events on the page, but for me, it's just cosmetic. I don't really care because you can go back to the homepage and see. So this is what a heuristic evaluation would look like. All right. Let's see. As it's loading, I'm going to take a look, see what's going on in the chat. Yeah, so those were the 10. What do I mean by happy path? That's a good question. So the happy path is the sequence of steps that as a product owner or as a designer, you imagine the user taking when using your product. So maybe the people who designed the museum website, they think when people are going to look for events, they will click on, maybe there's another events button, I don't know, on a certain thing, and that is how people will find events. So it's kind of like the right way to use your product. Have you found having a common worksheet and feedback would add bias change? Yeah, so that's a good question. And maybe clearly I wasn't clear about this, but the idea is every evaluator would have their own copy of the sheet, so you're not sharing on the same sheet. All right, so there was a question earlier about let's see, where is it? About AI stuff. So you might say, all right, cool, Simon, this is great, and these principles also are from like the 1990s, so they're old, but they still work. You might say, Simon, this is the new millennium. We're not in the 90s anymore. There's got to be new principles. There's got to be new heuristics. The user experience must have changed. And you would be right in that there are more precise heuristics for specific things, but generally speaking, these 10 heuristics, they do the job. So I just want to introduce kind of this concept of these more specific heuristics set of principles. So if you're working on a chatbot for something, well, there are usability principles specific for chatbots. And in those sets of principles, one of them, for example, is context preservation. So you want to make sure that the information is maintained within and hopefully across conversations. So if you're chatting with, I don't know, a customer service bot, and the first question it asks is, what are we talking about? Like, is this a billing question or change address? You don't want, like, after 5 minutes of chatting for it to go, what are we talking about? You want it to remember what you mentioned earlier. And then if you're working on something like a chat GPT or some sort of a more complex chatbot, you might want the chatbot to remember if in one conversation you say, hey, I'm a UX researcher. In another conversation, you don't want it to present information as though you were a healthcare practitioner. So that kind of principle would really lend itself well to a chatbot and make sure that you have a good user experience. Another set of principles is related to AI products where you have intent over input. So this is a really big challenge in AI products where you want to capture what the user is trying to communicate, not only the words that they're typing. And what I mean by that is people, the words that we say are not always, and often it's not the case, they're not exactly what we feel and what we'd like to say. So if you want a really good AI product, you need to find ways to really capture the intent, not just the words. And then finally, for like a child e-learning experience, you might want to make sure that it evokes child mental imagery. So you want the child's imagination to connect with the content, and that would enhance their comprehension. So you don't want to use like adult imagery and kind of like dry stuff that would really land with adults, but not necessarily children. So great. What's next? You're totally bought into this usability evaluation. You've done it with 3 to 5 people. You've prioritized your stuff. You've even gone out and you've addressed the critical issues. And now you're saying, Simon, I'm done, right? My product is awesome. It's usable. I'm gonna make my $10 to $100 return on my $1 investment. Well, I hope so, but there's other stuff that you can do. There's always more stuff that you can do. So something you can do is just usability testing. This is pretty basic. Just watch real people interact with your product, and this will actually complement the usability evaluation, because that you may remember we found like maybe 70% of all issues. Well, there's still a nice little 30% of issues that you missed. Watching real users interact with your product will really help you find the stuff that you missed, because people are people and they're just messy and unpredictable, and you'll see things that you thought, I could never have guessed that somebody would use my product this way. Then after that, something else that you can do is continuous discovery. So just regularly connect with users, with your customers, to just see how are they using your product. Is your product meeting their needs and kind of like their challenges? People change, contexts change, businesses change. You want to make sure that your product is keeping up with that change. And so having this kind of regular cadence of interviews with customers where they show you how do they use your product, and they say, well, actually now the industry standard for, I don't know, document management system is this thing. And so your product hasn't really kept up with this new industry standard. And you'll go, oh, geez, I didn't realize that. We need to change something if we want to stay competitive in the marketplace. So once you do your usability evaluation, the thing that we talked about with the 10 principles, the 2 next steps are usability testing and then continuous discovery. And this can be owned by either product, if you have a design team, And some companies, it's the designers that do this. Other companies, larger companies, you've got a UX researcher who would do this. It's really up to you. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for being here. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask them maybe in the chat, or you can reach out. Yeah, I'm super passionate about this stuff, so I'm happy to chat.
If anyone would like to get access to their mic, you could just use raise hand feature and I'll unmute you. Okay, we've got one person here.
There's a question about how to categorize problems when it fits in more than one principle. And ultimately, it like doesn't really matter. You can pick whichever one you want. The idea is just it gives you a kind of mental framework where you can look at something and go, ah, I have a word for this thing that I'm like feeling. Um, and it might very well be two different things. It really doesn't matter.
Griffin, you could go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Simon. This was great. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on using tools like usertesting.com to do sort of automated, unmoderated testing, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's really up to you. I do think so user testing is it's like a recruitment platform as well as an unmoderated platform. I think that the fastest and cheapest way to do usability testing is a heuristic evaluation. You can just get a bunch of colleagues together, spend an hour, and then you'll find a bunch of stuff. And then once you get those low-hanging fruit out of the way, then you would want to get like people who are not familiar with the product to identify stuff that you missed. So there's no bad sort of user feedback. It just depends the order in which you want to approach it.
Got it. Thanks.
Charlie, you should have access to your mic.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Simon. This was super insightful. One thing you mentioned was about the difference between the North American and European preferences in terms of usability and user interface. We have a product that we're just beginning to try and get into Mexico and India and soon other places. Do you have any, could you expand on that just a little bit? It's something, honestly, we hadn't even given any thought to, I don't think, in terms of how those users might like things to act or look different.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm not an expert in internal or international design, but something that is kind of like commonly talked about in the space is if you go on Chinese marketplaces, there's just a lot of stuff going on. And so you've got like pop-ups with little like bonus prize things, and then like maybe some live video stuff, and like you might look at that and say, wow, this is like an awful experience. There's so much stuff going on, but these are extremely successful platforms. The people that are designing them they know what they're doing. And so what might seem like not minimalist design is effective design in another place. I know in South America, there's a big emphasis on WhatsApp experiences. And so how do you design a good WhatsApp experience? Well, it's probably not the same as a SaaS website. So it's kind of those subtleties.
Awesome, thank you.
How to learn and ensure usability principles for products that are based on AI-driven task flows. I mean, the quick answer to that is AI-driven task flows have the same basic principles as just anything else. You want to make sure there's good error handling, that it's easy, it matches sort of the system and real world language. If you want to take it to the next level, then you'd be looking at more specific sets of usability principles, and there is a link to that in the deck. But step one is just to make sure that it's like good enough is often good enough.
Okay, I think that's all for the questions. I don't know if anyone has any other questions they'd like to ask. We do still have a few minutes. Okay, but if not, we will definitely also just share the slides, and we'll share the recording with you folks after the fact. So if you want to reach out to Simon, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much, Simon, for joining us today.
Great. Thanks everyone.
Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This was a great session.
All right, and feel free to reach out if anybody has any questions.
Okay, awesome. All right, folks. Well, we're going to end it here. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Tuesday and the rest of the week. And hopefully we'll see you soon at our next webinar. Thanks, folks. Goodbye.